and the smug, condescending way that he just spews this poison out is very, very dangerous, because he won't stop Trump, but he's going to outlive Trump by about 50 years. And you're watching the rise of an American demagogue that is a very, very despicable person. Yeah. And I was shaking listening to him talk, because a lot of people don't know that is one step away from Nazi propaganda coming out of his mouth.
All right, guys. So in a continuation of the Vivek Ramaswamy show, because that's essentially what, you know, today is going to be, okay? The media, they're talking about Vivek Ramaswamy all day, and they're having a complete and total meltdown. They're triggered by Vivek Ramaswamy saying things out loud on stage that you're not supposed to say, okay? He is essentially saying things that nobody else is willing to say, right? And this, of course, triggers the mainstream liberal media, outlets like CNN. When Vivek talked about January 6th and how Democrats talk about demographic change in this country, aka the double standard of how when Republicans talk about the demographic change that Democrats talk about, it's a hateful conspiracy theory, right? But when Democrats talk about demographic change, it's just a great thing, right? It's a great thing that we should all celebrate, okay? That's the double standard that was pointed out by Vivek that the mainstream liberal media, they're clutching their pearls over. And I want to react to this interview between Dana Bash and Vivek Ramaswamy, because Dana Bash might be the most dense CNN commentator or host or reporter that I've ever seen in my life. And I actually got so frustrated watching this interview with her and Vivek Ramaswamy, because she's just so disingenuous in regards to understanding the arguments that Vivek is making, because she doesn't want to actually engage with the arguments, okay? And that is, again, what frustrates me so much about the mainstream liberal media, is that all they do is smear people as bigots, racist, dangerous, harmful, all in an attempt to never engage with the actual argument or the subject that is being talked about, right? Because they don't want to engage with it. They know if they engage with it, then their narrative falls apart, okay? And that is what's happening here to Vivek in this interview with Dana Bash, in which she pretends that she doesn't know what Vivek is talking about when it comes to some of these topics that were discussed during the debate. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Let's just take two of those. Let's start with January 6th.
Sure.
There is no evidence that it is an inside job. It was a fringe conspiracy theory that the Trump-appointed FBI director, Christopher Wray, has said explicitly over and over is just not true.
So let me, I appreciate the opportunity to address it. I was an anti-woke crusader leaving the business world, and if you had asked me 3 years ago, is there some chance January 6th is an inside job, I would have said that was crazy talk. I would say, looking at the facts of the video footage that have come out, Dana, it is shocking that you still haven't gotten a clear answer of how many federal agents were in the field that day. Look at now the video footage of actually throwing explosives and rubber bullets into what was a peaceful crowd, then releasing to the public what came in response to that. But now look at the video footage that was released, and I'm glad we're talking about it because viewers deserve to look at that footage. Capitol Police literally letting people in who were then now prosecuted. Some of them have gone on to commit suicide because of what the government's doing. That is a case of entrapment, and I think the government has not been transparent about this, which is why I then brought up another case where the government, now 20 years later, with declassified documents, told us that they lied to us at the time. And so I do think we have a government that's consistently lied to its people.
But an inside job suggests that everybody was who attacked the Capitol was part of
that. I didn't say that, but I was saying that there's entrapment going on. There's entrapment going on, and this looks like a case of entrapment. And if you look at even over the last day.
What do you mean by entrapment?
Entrapment means that the police goaded people to do something otherwise than they otherwise wouldn't have done, and then they arrest them for actually doing it.
And you don't think it was actually the former president who was trying to get people?
I think that was the media narrative. Now look at...
See what I'm talking about, guys? You see what I'm talking about? How she refuses to engage with the actual argument, which the argument that Vivek is making is that, look, he believes, based off the evidence, okay, the new January 6th footage that's been released, and the fact that they can't tell you with a straight face that there was no FBI agents involved on January 6th, like they can't just say, no, we weren't involved, which again, you would think that if they weren't involved, they would just say, no, we weren't involved, right? But the fact that they can't tell you with a straight face that they weren't involved, without lying on the oath, again, you can extrapolate whatever conclusions you want from that. But again, instead of engaging with the core substance and the argument that Vivek is making about how maybe, just maybe, on January 6th, some people were goaded into doing things that they otherwise would not have done by police that day because of how they responded to the peaceful protest. Instead of engaging with that argument, she deflects to Trump. Well, do you think the former president may have done something, right? He may have had something to do with it. But again, the president of the United States said, go to the Capitol peacefully, right? That's explicitly what he said. And for whatever reason, they leave that part out of it, but they want to say that Trump incited violence when he literally called for peace, as evidenced by what she's about to say next.
Actually,
We heard him with our own ears.
Yeah, we did. We heard him with our own ears, and he said, go to the Capitol peacefully. Now, it was peaceful up until a certain point in which what Vivek is arguing is that you had police respond in ways based off video evidence that made the crowd not be peaceful anymore, right? And that is what he's talking about. That's the argument that he's making. But again, she don't want to engage with that.
What you think about this, right? You guys said this for a long time about the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot. Suddenly gone silent after it comes out at trial that absolutely that was a case of entrapment, which is why 2 of those people were acquitted. So I'm saying this as somebody who, on the other side of this, as a biotech CEO, somebody who was even anti-woke, but if I was looking at this, I would have said a lot of this is crazy talk. But if you actually get into the details, I think it is startling how much the government has systematically lied. And I think it's both parties over the course of the last 25 years.
But on the
left used to be better at pointing this out and being skeptical of the government, but now it's the right.
Which is the most aggressive, offensive attack on the U.S. Capitol and on democracy itself that we have seen in our lifetime and in many, many lifetimes. To say without evidence that it was an inside job.
I'm not saying it without
dangerous.
evidence. I think that what we're seeing now is the video footage that's come out. I was in a different place before a lot of that evidence came out, but you have to respond to the evidence. What is your response, or what is anybody else in CNN's response to the video footage that was released of Capitol Police literally just peacefully allowing people into the Capitol?
What we know
or
is
shooting
that
into peaceful crowds.
850 people have been convicted of crimes.
But the reality is many of them were convicted before that information was released.
And do you think that former President Trump has anything to do with this?
No, because you're bringing up a really good point, and your audience and everybody deserves to know the truth about this. Normally, there's a rule in constitutional law. It's called the Brady Rule. You have to turn over exculpatory evidence to the other side. In this case, it wasn't turned over because the DOJ said Congress was sitting on it. Now Congress has released it. That's why I said I would pardon many of those peaceful protesters because
I want to go to something else
violations.
that you said, which I think...
Yeah. So this is amazing. This is absolutely amazing, guys. And this is why I got so frustrated. I rage quit watching the liberal media reaction because I was like, I can't believe this. Look at how she's just refusing to engage with any of the things that Vivek is saying in regards to his actual core arguments, right? She's just given the same NPC response that they give to everything that does not fit the narrative, which, there's no evidence. But he just told you that there's new January 6th footage that had been released by the Speaker of the House showing all these things that suggest that what happened on January 6th may have been a case of entrapment, right? But again, because she is not allowed to acknowledge the fact that this evidence has been released, she won't acknowledge it the same way they won't acknowledge the evidence against Joe Biden in regards to influence peddling with Ukraine and China and with his son's foreign business dealings, right? She comes out here and again gives the same NPC response that they give to everything. Well, there's no evidence. What about Trump? Right? All I know is that this many people were arrested. But again, Dana, you made the statement, you asked the question saying, well, why did you say this with no evidence? He tells you that here is the evidence. And now all of a sudden you don't want to actually engage with the argument. You want to deflect to Trump and a bunch of other stuff. Again, it's just so frustrating, right? It's extremely frustrating. Okay? It's extremely frustrating. So let's continue here.
It's not a left or right issue. I think this is a civil libertarian issue.
I want to go to something else that you said that I think is really important to explore, and that is the great replacement theory.
Yeah.
That, I'm sure you know, is a theory that has been adopted by white supremacists who believe that people of color, Jews, are trying to overtake the white people in America. It has been used in mass murders from not even just America, worldwide.
You've asked this brought a lot of people that have mean a lot of different things, but I will be very specific about what I meant because I posted this yesterday, even before this debate. I've been very precise, and I'd encourage people to look at 10 hard truths I posted yesterday, including that video footage from Jan 6 for our last discussion. People should view it. Look at the video I posted yesterday of Biden and Mayorkas 10 years ago expressly discussing, and these are Biden's words, not mine, about non-white populations exceeding white populations in the U.S. through immigration, and that being not a bad thing, his words, not mine.
Not only our Muslim communities, but African communities, Asian communities, Hispanic communities, and the wave still continues. It's not going to stop, nor should we want it to stop. As a matter of fact, it's one of the things I think we can be most proud of. So there's a second thing in that black box, an unrelenting stream of immigration, nonstop. Folks like me who are Caucasian of European descent, for the first time in 2017, will be in an absolute minority in the United States of America. Absolute minority. Fewer than 50% of the people in America from then and on will be white European stock. That's not a bad thing. That's a source of our strength.
I think we should be able to have this conversation in the open without using fringe theories.
But when you use the term great replacement theory, that is
exactly what that refers to.
But you understand that that term is something that evokes anti-Semitism,
and it evokes piece of this. I'm against anti-Semitism, and I've spoken accordingly.
But people who have,
but I think we also have to admit the truth of what's happening, Dana.
But
this is coming through Biden's own words.
This is being used
10 years ago
for killings in Buffalo, for a killing in Poway, California.
If it was a Republican saying the same things that Biden said 10 years ago,
do you understand how
somehow you'd call
dangerous
it a conspiracy theory.
It's not even just a conspiracy theory. It's dangerous because
again, you see what's happening here. You see how she acts. Again, she refuses to engage with the actual argument. The argument that Vivek is making is the same argument I've made about this same subject. Okay? Democrats, when they talk about demographic change, right? Which essentially is basically what the great replacement is, essentially in a nutshell, it's just demographic change, right? When Democrats talk about demographic change and they celebrate it, oh, it's a good thing, right? It's great, it's awesome, right? But when Republicans bring up the fact that Democrats celebrate demographic change, oh, well, that's a conspiracy theory and that's hateful and yada, yada, yada. But the point that Vivek is making is that you guys say that when Democrats talk about demographic change, it's a great thing, but then pretend like it doesn't exist when Republicans talk about it and acknowledge that Democrats are out here celebrating open border policies that could be contributing to the demographic change, right? Again, it blows my mind. And instead of engaging with the fact that Democrats are essentially pushing great replacement theory when they talk about demographic change, instead of acknowledging that, which is something that Joe Biden has talked about, it's been talked about on MSNBC, it's been talked about on mainstream liberal media, demographic change, they talk about it all the time. Instead of acknowledging that, the only thing that she can continue to say is, well, you're saying the words great replacement. Therefore, you must be a bigot. You must be a hater of people of color or whatever. Like you're pearl clutching over a word, not the concept that Democrats have openly stated that, yeah, demographic change is happening and it's a good thing, right? This is what Democrats are saying, but for whatever reason, they don't pearl clutch over Democrats saying that when, again, they're essentially saying they're pushing great replacement theory. That's what Democrats are pushing. But there's no pearl clutching. They're not coming out here and saying, well, what Joe Biden is saying is dangerous, right? When you come out here and you talk about demographic change, that's dangerous stuff, right? They don't ever say that. It's only dangerous in the context of Republicans talking about it and it's saying that, well, this is what Democrats are saying. It's just amazing how that worked. But again, the point of the pearl clutching is because she doesn't want to engage with the actual argument. She doesn't want to openly acknowledge that Democrats basically are pushing the great replacement, right? They're endorsing that theory. This is what they're doing. They're pushing the great replacement theory when they come out here and they talk about demographic change. Okay, which is the point that Vivek is making, that Democrats are the ones that are pushing this conspiracy theory that the liberal media claims is so hateful and so harmful. Well, Democrats are the ones that are pushing it more than anything. They talk about it more than anybody, right? They talk about it more than anybody. That is the point that Vivek is making here. But again, she can't acknowledge that. So again, she gets caught up on a phrase and a term instead of actually debating the concept. Okay, and the actual substance of the argument that is being made.
Disagree. I think what's dangerous is the suppression of open dialogue. Well, look, I think that we need to have more open dialogue in this country. And when you tell people they can't speak, that's when they scream. If you tell people they can't scream or object, that's when they tear things down.
It's the term.
And
great replacement
you and I share something in common. We don't want to see violence in this country. I think the way we're going to get there is close the gap between what people will say in private and what they will say in public. Right now, there's a gap between those two things that is as big as I've seen in my lifetime. I think that is dangerous. I think that is a good way to get January 6th being a preview of what's to come in this country, unless we're able to have open conversation
and it's
without
people
being labeled
hear great replacement
as a racist
theory,
or a conspiracy theorist
or a
xenophobe or whatever.
Because of what it means to
me,
people who are
crystal clear. I'm the kid of immigrants. I'm proud of that. Legal immigrants who came to this country. But when the Democratic Party and Biden, the leader of the Democratic Party now, as recently as 10 years ago with Mayorkas sitting at his side, expressly talking about non-white populations exceeding white populations, that being a good thing, and immigration policies they've advanced to achieve that result, remain in Mexico, which they're not enforcing. Let's have that debate rather than saying this is a dog whistle, this is going to cause violence. What I'm worried about is that we are going to have, I would say I want to be careful in the way I speak about this because I don't want to get to a place about violence. We're skating on thin ice as a country right now. But as a leader, it is important to give people the permission to say in public what they'll otherwise say in private. A lot of it grounded in truth, to be able to have that debate without labeling somebody
ask you one question,
a xenophobe or a racist
I'm going to let you go.
or a denier or anything else.
Let's just say, and I'm not going to use the term anymore because it is a dog whistle for people out there who are looking for reasons to go after people of color and Jews. But
let's just agree to disagree on the importance of it.
She's more concerned about the term than the actual concept of demographic change and the implications and having that debate in regards to policy. She's much more concerned about pearl clutching over a term than engaging in the substance. That is what frustrates me so much about these people, because she's doing exactly what Vivek is arguing that they're doing. They're trying to stifle debate on Democrat policies by essentially just smearing people as racists and bigots and, whatever, for simply just acknowledging that, hey, Democrats are saying that this is happening. Let's have a conversation about it. Now, if you acknowledge that Democrats are saying that this is happening, no, you're a bigot. Again, it blows my mind. Again, which is, it's funny because they want to blame, for example, what happened in Buffalo. They want to say, well, it happened because this guy watched Tucker Carlson, even though this guy said he's not conservative, right? And the people that talk about demographic change the most are literally the mainstream liberal media. They talk about it more than anybody, right? And if I was to make an argument, I would argue that the guy probably was more likely to be radicalized by the liberal media, MSNBC, talking about demographic change all day than anything that he probably saw on Fox News. That's what I would argue.
Let's just assume that was something that was happening. Is that so wrong? What's wrong with people of color?
You see how she's trying to have it both ways? You see how she's trying to have it both ways here? So she asked the question, okay, this is like the closest she's going to get to actually engaging in the subject matter. Well, let's assume that is actually happening, right? Well, is that so wrong? Right? Is that a bad thing? Again, that's what people are trying to debate. That's the debate that needs to be had in regard. What are the implications of what happens when you have demographic change that occurs rapidly? But no, you can't have that debate because you're labeled hateful just for simply asking, okay, well, what does this mean? How do we How do we deal with this as a country from a policy perspective? You can't have that debate because the debate is stifled because of censorship and smearing of, people calling them, all types of names for simply just asking the question.
Just pause right there.
Being a majority in this
Let me just
country.
pause right there. This is a legitimate discussion for us to have. But we can't have it both ways to say that this is something that we're actually advocating for. It's an express policy, and we acknowledge that it's part of an express policy objective. Then let's actually get to the debate about whether this is good or not for the country, right? And so I embrace that, but thank you for getting to a useful place rather than just saying anybody who's saying this, if a person on the right says it's a conspiracy theory.
Exactly.
If a Democrat says it's immigration policy. And my view is I don't care about skin color. I could care less for skin color. Do you share the ideals of this country?
The Jews will not replace us.
Do
comes from the great replacement theory. I know you have to go, but just go back and look at that and think about.
And I would say go back and look at air for the people that are watching this. The videos that Mike Johnson has released of Capitol Police allowing them in. We should be able to at least have that debate in the open and air the video of Biden saying exactly what otherwise is described as a conspiracy theory with Mayorkas 10 years ago. Let's have honest debate. We can disagree, but don't label somebody a insurrectionist or a racist or a homophobe or a denier or anything else as a way of silencing debate. We should talk about it on the merits. And that last question you asked is exactly what many Republicans also want to be debating in the open, whether or not
I agree.
they agree.
Merits, facts, that's what we need to be doing.
Amen. So show the videos, and I think that'll be good for the viewers.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, they're not going to do that. They're not going to do that because it doesn't fit the narrative, right? So they're never going to show the extra videos. They're just going to say that there's no evidence that there may have been some entrapment going on or something else going on that day that doesn't fit outside of what the liberal media wants you to know, what Democrats want you to know. They're never going to do that. And again, this is why Vivek Ramaswamy is such a treasure to the Republican Party and what's currently happening politically in this country, because he is not afraid to say things that other Republicans are afraid to say because, again, they're afraid of being smeared as racist or bigoted or whatever, when it has nothing to do with hatred, racism, or bigotry. It comes from a place of wanting to have a real policy debate on real issues that should be discussed. Like, again, what all happened on January 6th, or the fact that, hey, Democrats are saying that demographic changes happen in this country and that it's a good thing. Okay, well, let's debate the implications of it. Let's talk about the implications of it. Where are we going as a country? What policies should be proposed to adjust to what is happening? Nah, you can't have that debate, though. You can't, because, again, what they do is that they stifle that debate by smearing you as something that you're not, simply for even asking questions about topics that they deem to be off limits because they don't want you to question it. And, of course, the reaction from CNN to this, right, I'll play you a little bit of it, is, doing the exact same thing that Vivek basically said you shouldn't do, right, which is to smear people as conspiracy theorists and bigots and yada, 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 for simply just asking questions.
Anderson, back to you.
Dana, thanks very much. Back with the panel here in New York.
Well, he's always a joy.
It's a lot to unpack.
None of these debates have helped Ramaswamy. When he started the debate season, he was at 7. Today, he sits at like 4. I mean, he's gone down after each one.
The more people get to know him, the less they like.
Yeah, I mean, not showing up for the debates would have been a great idea because then no one would know, what they know about him now. He really, there's only 2 people on that stage that have even some percentage chance of taking on Donald Trump. Everybody knows it. It's DeSantis and it's Haley. And yes, Christie's running a New Hampshire-focused campaign. But if you are going to get down to one or the other, the amount of time he takes up tying up the stage, I mean, it obviously helps Trump because, we don't get down to the main event.
It sure hurts the country, though. That guy is dangerous. That's dangerous. When those people are saying Jews will not replace us, Jews will not replace us, that slogan sits on top of a very sick and twisted view that if you bring enough people of color here, we are so deficient, we are so stupid, we are so unwanted that we will be zombies to fill out the ranks for some Democratic Party agenda that Jewish people are manipulating and driving forward. That leads to violence. That puts at risk Jewish people. That puts at risk people of color. It is wrong. And the smug, condescending way that he just spews this poison out is very, very dangerous because he won't stop Trump, but but he's going to outlive Trump by about 50 years. And you're watching the rise of an American demagogue that is a very, very despicable person.
Yeah.
And I was shaking listening to him talk, because a lot of people don't know that is one step away from Nazi propaganda coming out of his mouth.
Yeah. So again, what I tell you, none of these people engage with the actual subject. They don't engage with the actual argument. What they say is, well, he's a bigot, he's a Nazi. It's just ad hominem after ad hominem after ad hominem. But none of these people address any of the core arguments he was making, which is that Democrats talk about demographic change all the time, but yet it's labeled as a conspiracy theory when Republicans simply acknowledge the fact that Democrats talk about demographic change. Again, they don't want to talk about it. Again, notice how there's no engagement on the subject whatsoever, okay, on the merits at all. It's just smearing and that's it, right? Again, it blows my mind. But again, this is the state of our politics. Don't engage with arguments. Just smear people as, names or whatever. And that's basically what the mainstream liberal media does. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.